Good morning. Welcome to the bucket courses. Everything you want to know before you kick the bucket. My name is Barb Lease. Sarah had a meeting this morning, so I am her backup. Here are some things you need to know before we get started. Please silence your cell phones. Turn on your tea coil if you have one. If there's discussion or time for questions, we'll come around with the microphones. And if you're able, when everything's over, put your chair up on one of the dollies. And now for the main event. I am so pleased to be able to introduce Lesley Wright, retired director of the Grinnell College Museum of Art, which some of us remember as the Faulkner Gallery. Lesley is a graduate of Swarthmore College and earned her master's and PhD in art history from Stanford University. She became director of the Faulkner Gallery when it opened in 1999 and retired after 22 years at the helm. Today she'll tell us about her experiences at the museum during those years and how the museum makes connections on campus and in the community. Please join me in welcoming Lesley Wright.
Okay, can you hear me? All the way in the back? Okay, great. I will hope that this stays where it's supposed to. Thank you, Barb, for that lovely introduction. And I want to thank the Bucket Course and all of you for inviting me to share my reflections after 22 years at Grinnell College Museum of Art. This presentation has been modified from a talk I gave at the museum in October as part of their 25th anniversary year. So it's been around now for 25 years, hard to believe. It's been one of the great joys of my life to have been part of the life of Grinnell College and of this community for now going on 26 years. The Faulkner Gallery was an entirely unknown entity when we opened our doors in 1999. So we had a big job ahead of us in order to create an identity and to create a role for ourselves on campus and off campus, and also in Iowa and in the Midwest and in the art world beyond. Grinnell then wasn't known as an art destination. How did we change that perception? Well, it wasn't easy, and it did take us a while. We had to find our own core principles and figure out how they applied to very different audiences that we served. We served students, we served faculty and staff, we served all of this community out here, and we served the wider art world. I would say after about 5 years, we settled on our mission statement, and that mission statement is, the Grinnell College Museum of Art promotes learning through artistic excellence and creative collaboration. I want to talk today about how we became a museum committed to teaching and learning for everyone, and how we embrace collaboration on and beyond campus. What the museum is today wasn't necessarily what was envisioned for us before we opened. And just a note, I'm going to use the terms Faulkner Gallery and Grinnell College Museum of Art interchangeably throughout. We were Faulkner Gallery through 2019, and then at our 20th anniversary, we shifted our name and identity to the Grinnell College Museum of Art, and I could tell you all about that, but you don't need to hear that right now. I'm going to show a lot of slides. If you need me to stop and tell you something about one of the images, I'm not going to talk directly to them so much, but I have identified always what the show was and what year it was shown in. Sometimes at the bottom, sometimes at the top. All right. As a quick introduction to the staff and the staff roles, so you know who does what there, then and now. This is in 2016, we included, starting from the left, Connie Gauze, who was the administrative assistant. That role is now held by Simone Sidwell. Dan Strong is still the associate director and curator. Then there's me as the director. Milton Severe, who many of you know, is the director of exhibition design. Tilly Woodward is the curator of academic and community outreach, and Kay Wilson was then the curator of the collection. She retired in 2020, And we hired Jocelyn Kruger as our collections manager and registrar, and she's doing a fantastic job. The current wonderful director, who some of you have met, is Susan Bailey, and the staff now includes Jody Brandenburg and Steve Clayson as our museum guards. We used to use guards from other sources, and works much better now that they work for the staff. A bit of history. The print and drawing study room in the basement of Burling Library was established in the early 1980s to house the college's art collection, which itself had been established in the early 20th century, so over 100 years ago the collection was started. The college hired Kay Wilson to curate the collection, and Milton joined her in the late 1980s to be the preparator and to install the collection and exhibitions. In that very small space in the basement of Burling, they hosted exhibitions and introduced Grinnellians to art. They also, both of them, contributed to the design of what became the Faulkner Gallery and the new Bucksbaum Center for the Arts. And Dan and I were hired to open the museum in 1999. We were not part of the planning process. And we soon added an outreach curator, which some of you knew was Carla Nias, class of '89, for our first 7 years. And then we hired Tilly. As I just said, other staff followed later on. Before the Faulkner Gallery was built, how many of you knew about the print room or visited any exhibitions there? A smattering. It was a very hidden resource, I would say, for the community anyway. It was probably better known on campus. So here's the museum when we opened in 1999. Without any walls, we weren't provided with those walls initially. It was a space of wide open possibilities, shall we say. When we started, there were a lot of expectations about what we should be and whom we should serve. Many people on and off campus had only a passing notion of what happened in an art museum, and some people on and off campus weren't sure we had a place in Grinnell. We actually heard those kinds of comments early on. Why is the college spending money on a museum? Among the expectations we faced were, 1, we were just there for artists and art historians on campus. Or if someone was a little more generous, we were just there for the humanities at best. Some people assumed we would have very limited use to anybody else on campus. Others thought we were just for the campus and not for the community. And I have to say, the way Cesar Pelli designed Bucksbaum Center for the Arts, with this big blank wall facing the community, and it's hard to kind of find where the doors are, that didn't help. And you have to come into the building to get into our door, which is also something of an issue in terms of people feeling comfortable coming to the museum. And finally, the administration set an expectation for us at the beginning that the museum was intended to expand the college's reputation through exhibitions. That was our initial mandate from President Osgood, which is quite different for a college museum from telling us to show great art or to teach with the museum or to provide programs and resources for a wide audience. So Dan and I were hired, as I said, in May of 1999, and we had to have the museum open in September. That's a very short amount of time to get a museum up and running and an exhibition on the walls. So that it was a mad dash that first year to get everything going. Because you don't just have to plan the first exhibition, you have to have the next several in line ready to go when you open those doors. Since our initial mandate was to use the museum to expand the reputation of the college, I curated this, which was our opening show, and sought out work by the best artists I could find for that initial exhibition. Show was called Restructure, as it says there, and included names which the people in the art world would certainly have known. Jennifer Bartlett, who painted that painting with the red house on it, Mark de Souvero, Sean Scully, Ursula von Reitingsvard, and a number of other names that were well known in the art world. And we borrowed all of their works from galleries around the country. We didn't do museum loans because those often take many, many, many months to organize. But this show alerted artists, museums, and galleries nationally that we were a serious player in the museum world, which of course served to expand the reputation of the college. That year we also committed to showing student art annually in the annual student exhibition, which is now known as BAX. And we agreed to exhibit art by studio art faculty members in solo and group exhibitions. The faculty show for this year just closed. We wanted certainly to lift up the achievements of those creating on campus, since the college provides our budget, and to involve them in the exhibition process whenever possible while attracting local audiences of students and faculty. And the BAX opening is always one of the biggest events that we do because people all want to come see what their friends have been up to. And I warmly encourage you to visit the museum to see the BAX, which opens tomorrow. So it's about to go on the walls. We also made sure to put resources into high-quality publications like exhibition announcements and catalogs, and into publicity efforts more generally. We sent announcements to a local and national mailing list that we developed, providing tangible evidence of the work we were doing, especially to other artists, galleries, and alumni. We advertised locally, statewide, and often regionally for the shows. And we often gave catalogs away for free, knowing that they would serve as our ambassadors and be shared with others long after the exhibitions closed. From day one, we had a strong focus beyond campus to attract an audience. The goal of expanding the college's reputation was very much an external-facing goal. Dan Strong's connections with Smith College, where he had been employed earlier, allowed us to borrow 2 major exhibitions that first year built from their very strong museum collection. And we closed our first year with an exhibition that really established our statewide reputation due to a big advertising blitz that the college committed to doing. And that show was Corot de Picasso. I bet some of you saw this show. It included the promise of being able to see works by Monet, Degas, Picasso, and other blue chip artists from the late 19th, early 20th century. And we were able to attract 21,000 visitors to see that exhibition. The town of Grinnell was thrilled because we brought a whole lot of people to town who then spent money here. And it showed that we were contributing to more than just the campus. So I'm going to pause there for what I've said so far. Are there any questions to this point? Okay. By year 3, we began to align our work more closely with the campus and the community. Grinnell's wider reputation remained important, but we felt as a staff we needed to rebalance our work to better address the audiences, the real audiences we had here and in the surrounding rural area. We were learning lessons about what connected us to those around us, and through those connections, we deepened our relationships and made our exhibitions more meaningful. And today I'm going to focus on how we did this through exhibitions. And I'm going to talk some about how museum outreach and publicity contributes to creating a successful museum in sync with our community. I'm going to spend less time talking about the collection itself, which could be an entire separate talk, which I hope somebody will do someday. In the process of realigning, the staff began to understand ourselves, every single one of us, as educators. So Tilly's not the only one who serves in that role, but we all do. We try to be available, flexible, and generous partners to all who want to work with us, whether they are faculty on campus or Drake Library staff or school children. The more we took on the role of educators ourselves, the more the expectations and misconceptions about an art museum in Grinnell began to shift, because we weren't just working for ourselves, thinking about it just as an art museum, but we were working for everyone around us. And we realized Grinnell's reputation would be enhanced by this stronger teaching role. So for the rest of my talk, I'm going to unpack 10 lessons we learned over the first 20 years that really cemented the Grinnell College Museum of Art as a 21st century liberal arts museum embedded in its community. Okay. Lesson number 1. From the beginning, we committed to a high standard of artistic excellence. What we did needed to be on par with the caliber of Grinnell College and its students and faculty. Within that standard, we chose to exhibit the best possible work of a wide variety of kinds of art. We did historical exhibitions when we could get a hold of them. It's not easy to get a lot of historical exhibitions to come to a tiny town in the middle of Iowa. Lots of modern and contemporary art to speak to our own times and to the times of our students. Works in every possible medium. I think we've shown paintings, prints, drawings, photography, sculpture, art installations, video, craft, and textiles. And ceramics, I should add. This range gave more people a chance to see art that interested them personally, and we knew we had a responsibility to bring the best possible art to rural Iowa, where people don't always have a chance to get to a museum. As examples, Kay Wilson curated the first ever exhibition in the world of prints by acclaimed international artist William Kentridge. That's this show here on the left. The show traveled to other museums nationally, and his visit, he came from South Africa, was a major event attracting audiences from around the Midwest. His themes are related to apartheid and migration, and they intersected well with Grinnell's historic interest in social justice topics and with teaching going on at the time. And then early on, 2001, so very early in our time, Dan and Milton worked with New York well-known artist Sandy Skoglund to commission this site-specific piece you see here on the right that was made entirely out of popcorn. Bringing art and artists of this caliber to a rural community and college was a privilege made possible by the college's really strong support of our work. So Sandy sets up these tableaux, and then she takes these really high quality photographs of them. And in the long run, it's the photographs that last and that other places buy and collect. But some museums have the tableaus. If you've ever been to the Denver Art Museum, they have one with red foxes jumping over a kitchen, I think. So sometimes you'll see her tableau. Lesson number 2. Early on, we learned to call on a wide range of partners by providing interdisciplinary and collaborative opportunities. In that vein, a number of the major exhibitions that I curated drew on interests and talents across campus and in town. And these shows really helped break down the art, non-art silos and brought people together for wider conversations stimulated by the art. Some of these were projects we initiated in partnership with the Center for Prairie Studies. One example is this Roots of Renewal, which celebrated Midwestern art and artists, those contemporary artists today who, like Grant Wood almost 100 years ago, sought an art language drawn from where they live. Instead of being art about the places on the coast, it was art about where we are. In addition to the museum exhibition, we worked with campus and community on a committee to commission a piece of music by Craig Naylor celebrating our Midwest roots. The piece used poetry written by community members and school children and was performed at the high school by a campus community school choir of 700 voices, which was amazing. We also worked as a team to select artists who created installations in the community and on campus, including in a house off campus. That's the one on the bottom right there, which was on this property that we're on now. The college used to own this piece of land, and it was at the back end of this property, that little house. And in the community, so that piece on the upper right was in a storefront on Commercial Street, which is now Baker Sterrett. We also, in the process of developing all of these pieces, hosted dinners with local farmers and spiritual leaders to talk about the way food and spirituality intertwine to develop community. These are topics that still go on today here. It was a huge project, and it would be difficult to replicate it, but it was really rewarding, and it really got a lot of people engaged with the museum. And I have to say, I couldn't have done this show without local help. I called on local carpenters to help build some of the works on view, and I needed to get people to provide the soil that was filling the space in the upper right, and to give us, we needed dried corn cobs. I had to get that from someplace. All these things that contemporary artists often think up a work of art, but then it's up to the museum to kind of make it happen. So you learn all sorts of new tricks. So I'd like to give a shout out to some of our friends who are here and no longer with us. Orlin Mitchell, Howard Rafferty, and Barney Barenfuse were crucial to make this thing come together. So, community, it's all about community. Other projects started with exhibitions that we borrowed from other museums, but involved extensive on and off campus collaborations. The Tang Teaching Museum at Skidmore College organized Molecules That Matter, around 10 organic molecules that changed the 20th century. Each molecule was accompanied by art that connected the compound to its effects on our daily lives and culture. The exhibition gave us the chance to work with chemistry, biology, and anthropology faculty and many other departments on the programming that went out across campus and into town. For this show, Tilly worked her magic and involved chemistry students in projects with school kids. The students taught basic chemistry to every fourth grader in visits to the exhibition, and the kids then invented their own molecules that were collected to create a wonderful mobile that hung outside our front door. We have lots of other examples of great interdisciplinary projects, such as one you might have seen of the stunning photographs by Canadian Edward Bertinsky. He was photographing water and the ways humans use and abuse it in their societies. And that was originally organized by the New Orleans Museum of Art. The connections with multiple world cultures, with climate change, with ecology, and with geography invited so many collaborations around a deeply interdisciplinary topic. And with all of these projects, we were weaving art well beyond just the art department. Lesson number 3. We learned to move beyond the museum walls whenever possible. Disinterest in or suspicion of the museum, frankly of any art museum, will always be present. And that's true on campus and off campus. This is not something that is a town gown problem, it's an everybody problem. By going out to people, we brought art to where they are comfortable and offered ways we could be of assistance with our expertise. Over the years, we have participated in bringing public art to campus and to town and have taken care of it once it's here. So we steward the art that comes here. I worked directly with alumnus Gregory Gomez to commission this sculpture, Broken English, for the opening of HSSC. And I worked with students on a number of projects that created displays across campus, and this is just one example here. Through this work, we modeled professional standards for handling art and displaying it. We manage expectations on how the museum's collections can and cannot be used. And we bring others into the process of adding art to the spaces that they inhabit. Moving beyond the museum walls also includes presenting exhibitions in unexpected spaces on campus and in the community. When the college became a Smithsonian affiliate in 2020, I began a successful partnership with Drake Library and the college's Office of Community Partnerships, Planning, and Research, and particularly with Sarah Smith, who I'm sorry is not here today, to bring Smithsonian exhibitions to Grinnell. It was great to work with Drake Library to host these diverse exhibitions, and that partnership continues. It continues to evolve. As the museum partner on this team, we lent exhibition expertise and then helped to mentor students who were assisting with these projects. And let me say a word about the importance of outreach to this work of moving beyond museum walls. To overcome a reluctance to come on campus that some people have, or to step into the museum because of our complicated doors. Tilly regularly takes programs into the community, as most of you know. She partners with the schools, with Drake Library, with local foods on summer programs for kids. She has a whole Art in the Park project that goes on every summer. And then during the school year, she works with schools, preschools, and programs for neurodiverse Grinnellians to provide enrichment, to have museum experiences, and to do hands-on learning. Her sparkle truck, which I hope all of you have seen, is a beacon of creativity for many around town. She helps people see the museum as a space for great conversations, which she's really good at leading, regardless of their experience with art. And when we opened the museum, I knew we couldn't rely on exhibitions alone to bring people into our new space. We had to go out to them, and we had to have staff who knew how to engage the public. As another means of going into the community, our staff regularly serve on a wide range of committees on campus and in town, showing that the museum is part of the life of where we are. All of these efforts, while seemingly beyond the scope of an art museum, invite future interactions and build relationships. I'm actually at a good stopping point, but I was wondering if we had any questions for this first half before we take a break, and then we will continue. Yes, sir.
Excuse me. When you borrow an exhibition from a distant museum, is there a set of funds involved? Do you just do it on a handshake?
No.
And who pays for the shipping? And who packs it?
Okay, so exhibitions are, if a museum puts together an exhibition and they want to send it around to other places, they have to arrange to find the museums they're going to send it to in advance before they ever open that show. Because the insurance is going to depend on how long the works are on loan out of the museum to other places. So we would regularly get lots of proposals. You know, we were doing this exhibition, would you like to take it? Here are the dates, whatever. And if there was a show like Carota Picasso that we want to take, we contact the museum and say, yes, we want to take it. And we understand that the fee is X, and it's usually a number with at least 5 digits in it. And usually you pay for one leg of transportation, either incoming or outgoing. So Smith had organized it, they'd send it to us, and then we would show the show, and then we would pay to send it to the next place down the line. And it varies who organizes that shipping, depends on the show and how it's being done. Packing and unpacking are all done by the staff. That's why you want a trained staff who knows how to handle art. And another museum won't lend it to you if you can't prove that you have trained staff, generally. So if they don't think you've got the people who can take care of their work, they're not going to send it to you. And you also have this very elaborate document called a facilities report, which details to them what your walls are made of, how strong your floors are, what your lighting is, where your doors are, what your security arrangements are, what your humidity and temperature controls are, so they know that their work is in an environment that's going to be well taken care of. So it can be a costly proposition, and that's why it was hard for us to often get historical shows to come, because historical work has a higher value in many cases, and that those shows are more expensive, and they're less willing to send it to a place where your audience is not going to be big. They want an expensive show to go to a place where it's going to get seen by a lot of people. So there's lots of factors that go into it. I often said to people, building an exhibition schedule was sort of like editing a magazine. Sometimes you have the good ideas, sometimes somebody pitches you a good idea, sometimes you've got somebody who's researching a good idea, and eventually they all come together and you get an issue put together, or a year of exhibitions put together. So there's a lot that's going on. Yes? Yes.
It looks like there's fresh painting on those sheets. I'm wondering, is that part of the art?
No. Actually, what you're seeing is glitter. So the surface of the sparkle truck is Elmer's glue and glitter. And it's probably, it's a good half-inch thick now. Because people just keep putting more and more and more layers on top of it. Yeah. So it's, any rust that was under there is now completely held together by Elmer's glue and glitter. But the problem is you can't drive it when it's raining. Because Elmer's doesn't do so well in the rain. Yeah. So no, the tarps come up. It's just to keep glitter from getting absolutely everywhere, which it does anyway, but it's a feeble attempt to confine the glitter.
Okay. We will take a 10-minute break. Listen for the bell. Thank you for returning promptly. Once again, Lesley Wright.
Okay. So if you're keeping score, we're only up to lesson 3. In the second half of my talk, I'm going to move a little more quickly through the other 7 lessons. They are certainly more focused on how we integrated into the mission of Grinnell College, but each has relevance for how we connect to our audiences beyond campus. So lesson number 4. As we worked to expand Grinnell's reputation, we learned to reframe museum work as a way to bring a liberal arts education to life. To create an exhibition from scratch takes imagination, research, an understanding of art objects, writing, organizing, lots of editing, design, and interdisciplinary thinking. All of these skills are hallmarks of a Grinnell education, as well as museum work. We challenge our student interns to organize exhibitions, and we provide guidance for classes across campus who are preparing projects for exhibition in the museum and beyond the museum. Helping them define a topic, use works of art effectively, and create meaningful wall labels is complex and draws on many facets of their education. Whenever possible, we acknowledge and credit their contributions and the contributions of others on campus so that all of our visitors can see the learning on display and how they have helped. Is this thing clicking? Little. Animals Among Us, which is this show here on the left, was an interdisciplinary seminar I taught around the topic of animals. Students came from a wide range of majors, and some of them had very little experience with art. I asked each of them to be the subject expert in their major field of study, whether their major was biology, English, French, psychology, whatever, and together they taught one another about how animals were seen in their disciplines, and then worked together to curate visual materials from the museum and from other campus collections to tell a complicated story of the human relationship with other creatures. Along the way, they learned how challenging it can be to try to tell a story visually and in 3D. In this particular slide, some of these works are from the collection, but the table and the skeleton are things we borrowed from the biology department. So we kind of scoured campus for things having to do with animals. In all the years of working with students doing exhibitions, with Grinnell students in particular, the hardest thing to get them to do was to tell the story first with the objects and only secondly with the text. They would propose an exhibition which really visually made very little sense, and I'd ask them to explain it, and they'd say, well, it'll say what it is on the text. I said, I don't want you to explain the show with the text. I want people to walk in and see what it is you're trying to tell them. And that's a tough thing for people to learn who aren't used to it. We also taught summer faculty workshops on curating. This show Influence on the right came about from a summer faculty workshop offered by museum staff that introduced faculty to the collection and to curating as a way of thinking. The result was 4 interconnected exhibitions by faculty curators in the departments of biology, German, English, and the libraries. And the portion that you're seeing here was curated by Catherine Rodd, who I am sure many of you know. And it focuses on works of art that include text in them as part of the art. These spaces, these 4 spaces, were then used by the curator faculty members as part of their teaching for the semester. Showing students and faculty that they can use exhibitions to express particular scholarship is powerful and gives them a new 21st century tool for sharing their learning in a visual way. We are now seeing people all over campus organizing exhibitions, and museum staff frequently advise on those projects. Lesson number 5. This one may seem insanely obvious, but it takes constant initiative on the part of everyone on the staff. We learned to involve students in everything we do. As assistants, as interns, as our frontline staff, as postgraduate fellows, in friend groups, in exhibition design, and in our work with the collection. The reason it takes constant work is students graduate and you have a new crop and you have to keep teaching new students about all these things. We came to understand that through these connections and in our daily work, as I mentioned much earlier, we all teach. And I'm not talking here about lecturing in classes or providing tours, though certainly we do that. I'm talking about teaching students to do selected portions of the real work of a museum staff. And I would venture that in all my years, there's probably been 1, maybe 2 or 3 students who came to Grinnell knowing they wanted to work in museums. For most of them, it's a revelation that could be a career for them. So Milton, as exhibition designer, helps students learn to prepare and install art. Dan is a resource on exhibition planning and on photographing art and exhibitions. He does a lot of these photos you're seeing were photos that Dan took of our exhibitions. Having those skills of photographing your art is really essential for creating an artist portfolio these days. Tilly works with students year-round, empowering them to lead programming and outreach on and off campus, and helping students themselves become instructors. Jocelyn's students in the print room help with collection and collection research, which these days involves a sophisticated knowledge of database creation, which is a really great 21st century skill to have. Jocelyn continues the work that Kay pioneered, and then Jody and Steve and Simone train our students to be frontline ambassadors for the museum. So they tell them the importance of having a public face. And they are often the first person somebody sees when they walk in the museum. Over the years, I advised many interns interested in museum work, many of whom were able to create small exhibitions or contribute research for some project we were doing. More formally, I also started teaching museum studies as a course in 2005, and Susan continues to offer that course today, introducing the practice and theory of all types of museums to students interested in museum fields. And on the right are museum studies students a number of years ago who were able to curate an art and history exhibition as part of their museum studies class that year. And these students were part of our friends group that we started a while back. And I want to emphasize that the students we work with are not all art and art history majors. And we now have alumni working in history, science, anthropology, heritage, and art museums across the country. Through this experiential education, the museum has become a solid part of a Grinnell education, and interacting with Grinnell students has become part of the experience of our visitors, which is great. Lesson 6. We learned and continue to learn multiple ways to support the curriculum. In addition to giving tours to classes and working with faculty to design assignments and presentations at the museum, we develop exhibitions connected with coursework. In 2006, we collaborated on a physics-based exhibition. The Art of Structural Design, an exhibition organized by Princeton University, came to Grinnell when Professor Bill Case in physics approached us about bringing it here so he could use it in his teaching. The exhibition was a great success and demonstrated to the campus that we could partner with every department. More of these faculty suggested exhibitions followed and brought new ideas to the community as well. In addition to temporary exhibitions, the collection has grown under Kay, Dan, and Jocelyn's direction, and it has become a more versatile tool for all sorts of teaching. In accepting works of art for the collection, we have become much more discerning about how it can be used for classes. We continue to use the print room as a laboratory of sorts where faculty can ask to see certain works of art and bring classes to look closely at original works of art as part of their Spanish or classics or French or biology or anthropology classes. We've even done special projects with chemistry where certain objects in the collection have been analyzed in various ways for chemical compositions. The use of the print room might be a one-time visit, or it could be a whole set of assignments lasting many weeks that bring students back over and over to look deeply at works of art. Any questions at this point? Yes.
That the students work on, how do you get those pieces? Are they all done by students or done by local artists, or how are they put together? Do you have like a call for artists, or how do you get them?
She's asking about how, when a student is asked to do an exhibition, how the works of art are provided to them to do it. When we do student exhibitions, they're only working with art that's in our collection. So they're things on campus. And often these shows today are presented down in the lower level of Burling Library. And they're usually thematic. And so they will work closely with Jocelyn and possibly with a faculty member if it's something that they're doing for a course to explore an idea. And Jocelyn will think about things we have in the collection and pull them out for them to look at. And then this is part of the editing process of creating an exhibition. They will have to figure out which of those objects best tell the story they want to tell. And there's limited space. They can't put everything up, so they have to be really discerning about which things they have. For student exhibitions, because they're usually done over the course of a single semester, we can't go borrowing work because that just takes too long. And we usually don't have the budget to bring things in over that short a period of time. So those shows are built out of the collection itself.
Okay, thank you.
Is there another question back there? No? Yes? No? Okay. All right, moving on. Lesson 7. We learned that the museum was an ideal place to manifest Grinnell's international focus. You know that Grinnell has a very strong reputation of bringing international students to campus, to bringing international visitors to campus, to teaching about a range of topics that are very international in their focus. So from our second year, we began exhibiting international art, either borrowing it from other places or curating it ourselves. This literally brought the world to Grinnell in exhibition form. And exhibitions like Power of the Word on the right and Layers of Brazilian Art brought international artists and curators to town as well. Layers of Power of the Word on the right was a show by contemporary Chinese artists who used the character, the word itself in Chinese, as the basis of a work of art, and that was a traveling show. Layers of Brazilian Art was a show that I curated from Brazil with the help of a trustee who was living in Brazil at the time, a Grinnell trustee. In addition to these two shows, over the years, we have exhibited art and artists from Estonia, Iraq, Italy, Sweden, Denmark, Japan, Germany, the Netherlands, Russia, Turkey, Portugal, South Africa, China, Canada, India, and Haiti. These exhibitions became vehicles for building excitement among visitors on and off campus, and it really cemented our reputation as a place in Iowa to see international art. The exhibitions and visiting artists provided an amazing opportunity for classes from across campus to have one-of-a-kind experiences and learn more about the world. The artists in turn embraced life in this community and learned about a part of the U.S. that foreign visitors rarely encounter, since we are a flyover country for most tourists. Most people don't come to small-town Iowa. The international exhibitions also posed a challenge. As great as the art might be, there wasn't always a meaningful tie-in to the curriculum and to the community. Brazil, Sweden, Denmark, Portugal, Morocco, they don't really have a great fit on campus or with the wider Grinnell community. I would say Brazil is changing a little, but so we've learned to home in on international art where the subjects tackled by the artists are more in line with the concerns of our audience. So that's a place where we had to, over time, kind of find our way. Lesson number 8. One lesson that has emerged over time is that long and deep relationships developed over many years with faculty lead to new and exciting possibilities. A challenge with all our exhibitions is that they only last for weeks or months, and thus connect with only those lucky enough to be here at the moment, though they may live on in catalog form. But because we can work alongside faculty for years, we can develop projects with them over time that continue to give dividends. For instance, Making Life Visible, which we showed in 2018, was the culmination of many years of collaboration on work that I did with Professor Jackie Brown in biology. Over the years, we did a faculty tutorial around the Darwin, and it was one of the anniversary of his birth, I think, that year. He was part of the faculty workshop that produced Influence, that show curated by faculty members. We both participated in an off-campus seminar about animals and then taught courses on animal topics, and you saw what my students did around that. And we often contributed to each other's classes and to each other's teaching, back and forth, both of us learning more about our various topics. Eventually, I agreed to host an exhibition as part of his and Assistant Professor Idell Cooper's NSF grant. NSF grants often have a part where the applicant has to prove that they're going to have a wider applicability with their research to beyond the scientific world. So he proposed doing this exhibition. And that resulted in this exhibition that we both curated together. So it wasn't just me, it was me and Jackie. In the show, we explored how artists and scientists use art and science to better visualize the workings and processes of biology and make it visible to others. For instance, this scientist, Damien Lodier, takes images seen through a very high-powered microscope and then uses his artistic eye to bring forth both the information in that image and the beauty. Working across disciplines like this and the time it takes is both intellectually and creatively inspiring and is really one of the great gifts of working at a college like Grinnell. And as a parenthetical remark, I have to say our colleagues in science have been some of our strongest campus allies. And I think it's because scientists often are thinking visually as well as disciplinarily about things. And so they appreciate what goes on in works of art. They get inspiration from it as well. Lesson number 8. One lesson that has emerged over time. No, I just did that one. Lesson number 8. Lesson number 9. Moving on. We learned to use Grinnell's amazing alumni in various ways. They are artists, they are curators, they're speakers, they're advisors, and they're donors. Grinnellians are a source for excellence and are really eager to contribute back to their alma mater. The museum has provided a way to engage alumni that wasn't there before we opened our doors. And we've done at least 6 exhibitions of art by alumni artists in both group and solo shows. And these include this powerful exhibition on the left by Robert Hodier, class of '68, taken in Vietnam during and just after his time as a student. So Bob actually left college for a while, went to Vietnam to photograph during the Vietnam War, came back, finished his studies, and then he enlisted in the Army after Grinnell and worked as a Army photographer, which led to a long career as a photojournalist, usually in war-torn areas. So we showed this exhibition of his Vietnam photographs. We've worked with at least 3 alumni curators on shows of historic quilts, of Zulu ceramics, and as seen here, of art based on fairy tales. That was Dread and Delight. We've had alumni, curators, art critics, and scholars back to campus to give talks, to work with classes, and provide career advice to our students. By putting a spotlight on Grinnell alumni working in the arts and in museums, it gives students and others a real tangible sense of what their future could look like while engaging alumni through the work of the museum. That became one of the most inspiring parts of the work that we were doing. And I parenthetically want to also add that alumni also continue to enrich the arts in our own community. So Dave Lowenstein, class of '89, did this mural with members of the community way back. I think, 2000 we did this. Carla Nias spurred this project. And other art majors and alumni have been actively involved with Grin City, with the Grinnell Area Arts Council, and with the STU, and with various projects we've all come to know around town. Also in theater and in music around the community. Finally, lesson number 10. We learn to see the museum as a site for participation, experimentation, performance, and conversation, right in the midst of exhibitions of art. This was a lesson the staff had to learn, and we had to negotiate together over the years. When you want to insert programs and performances into a museum space, it really challenges ideas of what a museum and a museum visit should be. For those of us who love art, we want people to come to the museum for the art. But some people lack the comfort level with going just to look at art, and events of this sort can make their entry point and become a catalyst for future visits. But events inside a museum bring new questions to museum operations. How do you do yoga in the gallery and keep the art safe from all those arms and legs kicking around? Can you have an artist demonstrating in the space if their art requires them to have water? Because generally we tell you to leave your drinks at the desk, right? What sort of theatrical or dance performances can we accommodate when the dancers need lights and they need space and you have to put an audience somewhere and you've got these walls up and people will say, well, can you just move the wall? It's like, it's not that easy. You can't just move the wall. It's got art on it. How big an audience can we seat for a talk by a major artist, for instance, or for a writer? Should we be open after hours? And if we are, who on the staff is going to be there for that? All of these are questions that come up. Plus, there's the question by some staff of, should we even be doing this? Aren't we an art museum? So there's a lot of negotiation around this. Despite these issues, using the museum as a dynamic space for more than exhibitions really activates the museum and often entices new visitors to step through those doors. Coming to a talk is a familiar campus activity. And students know that if their professor is speaking or an artist they're interested in, they would go to a talk. But the location may be different than what they're used to going to on campus. Then they may linger to look at the exhibition and realize that it could be of interest and they might want to come back again. Often the events held in the museum connect with a current exhibition and provide context for what people are seeing on the walls. So the context gets them in and then they get interested in the art. That was certainly the case with the talks that we had connected with the Swiss Bridge Design Show or Molecules That Matter. And for other shows, the visiting artists are the lure. We've had some pretty major artists here, and we usually try to do their talk in the museum so that they are surrounded by the work that they are talking about. In 2011, we hosted 3 master artists from China here who gave hands-on demonstrations of woodblock carving and printing in the museum, and that was alongside an exhibition of historic Chinese books that were made with these same ancient techniques that are still used today. And these people all came from a book museum in China where they do these demonstrations there as part of the programming of that museum. They were with us for 9 days, and they interacted with students and community members and school groups. Though there was a significant language barrier, we did have some people there to translate, and people were fascinated to see the process of the creation. And a lot of people were able to take home a little print that they were making right there as part of the process. Most exhibitions include a community day for students and families to experience the art on view and then do hands-on activities. They're usually on Saturdays. These bring together campus and community, and our student outreach assistants are really important for their success. The museum is now known also as a site on campus for other kinds of non-art events. So we will have departments reach out to us and say, we're bringing this speaker or this panel to campus, and we think it would be great to do it in the museum, and we decide whether that's going to make sense. We've been the site for convocations. We've had several convocations in the museum. And we also often host writers at Grinnell events in the evening. These are also things that entice new people into the space. So we now see the museum as a space for expanding the experience of art rather than limiting it, and inviting people in with a range of opportunities. So there are so many things that we've done over the past 22 years that I couldn't even mention, and more that's been done in the 3 years since I've been gone, that have all helped knit the museum into Grinnell, on campus and off campus. Through the 10 lessons I discussed, I hope we've helped our campus and community see the museum as an inspiration, as a place that welcomes everyone, and as a resource, a kind of toolbox that is always here and available, akin to the kinds of resources offered by a contemporary library. In closing, it was always my wish that we would find a way to get everyone on campus into the museum. I don't think we've ever quite achieved that goal, and provide them with positive experiences. I'd love for us to reach more people in town, and that is also something that we continue to strive to do. When we started, the perception for many of a campus art museum was rather flat or limited. And through our work embracing the museum as a site for teaching and learning and promoting collaboration, I hope we've created a 3-dimensional liberal arts museum that is now firmly a part of Grinnell and of a Grinnell education. I'd love to hear your thoughts, memories, questions, whatever you'd like to point toward me.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you and your staff come up with all the wonderful ideas for exhibits?
It's such a range. I mean, like the Brazil show came about because we were starting a patrons group for the museum, and one of the people on that group was a board member who was a big art. He was on the board at the Des Moines Art Center, but he was currently living in Brazil. And when he was back for a board meeting, he said, "I'd love to help you do a show from Brazil. You pay attention to those little nuggets that people drop." I say, "Okay, good idea. I think we'll do that." So it's things like that. Sometimes it's we did the Portuguese show because an artist we engaged to do some other art, and who I'd known from when I was a curator in Cedar Rapids. She had done a Fulbright in Portugal and said, "I think their art would be great at Grinnell. I'll help you do that show." So we had an entree there. Dan became a real proponent of photography. Photography had not been a big part of Grinnell and Grinnell curriculum when we started. In fact, if you think about it, there was not a darkroom put in Bucksbaum when it opened in '99. But Dan really championed photography, and he started finding all these interesting photographers when he went to art fairs. And so he put together the photography from Sweden show, the photography from Denmark show. He did the Bertinsky show from Canada. So he has been finding things. He goes out a lot. He's sort of our eyes and ears out in the art world and finds a lot of stuff and brings it back. And he does a lot of the big solo shows that we do, which take a lot of development of time working with an individual artist. Mostly that goes well, and sometimes it's a little rockier. So it's a lot of different things, and what comes across your desk when Bill Case walked in and said, "I want to do a Swiss Bridge show." We looked at the schedule and said, "Actually, we could fit that in, and that's a great idea." So it's serendipity, it's personal interests. I have a real personal interest in showing art of the Midwest because I feel like if you're a museum in the Midwest, the coasts are not going to show Midwestern art. It's just not of interest to them. So we have to be the champions of the artists who are choosing to live and produce here. So that's something that and it fit well with Prairie Studies for me to do that. Yep. Monty.
What was the most valuable piece of art that you've had in your displays?
It was probably something in Corota Picasso, but I can't say for sure. We don't always, we're not thinking of the works of art by how much they're worth. We just sometimes have to make sure we can handle the insurance on that. Yes.
I had
Shane.
a friend in Maine who was an artist and an architect.
Mm-hmm.
And one of his fascinations was the crossover between the museum and the art world and sports.
Mm-hmm.
So he gave me one of his pieces of a photograph that he had taken and a picture that he had painted after that of Arnold Palmer.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that this morning you've not mentioned the sports effect at all in where you've been. Does that have any enticement there?
Well, since I'm not there anymore, I can't control what they're doing. But it had not. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything we did that involved sports. I don't think there was. But interestingly, Emily Stamey, who I mentioned, who did the fairy tale show, in 2020, she did a show called To the Hoop, which was all about art and basketball. And she found amazing works of art that tie in with basketball. So there are people out there that are doing a lot with sport. Unfortunately, that show was in 2020, and we know what happened to everything in 2020. It did not get widely seen because of the COVID, yeah. But there's a great catalog for it. There are endless topics that you can bring in and connect with art. It's just amazing. I don't know how many hundreds of shows we did over those 20 years, but there were a lot of shows, and they, many of you know, and they were on all kinds of topics.
I realize you probably don't have a full agenda on this, but do you have any input on upcoming shows? No. None? Okay.
No. I have happily relinquished my role and handed it off to the experts.
Thank you so much, Lesley, for sharing your experience as director of Grinnell College Museum of Art. We look forward to seeing everyone next Wednesday, April 23rd, when Brooke Holder, Public Health Manager at Unity Point Grinnell, introduces us to Disaster Prepwise, a program that helps individuals and communities prepare for emergencies. See you next week.